In this episode, I'm joined by Dressage Naturally instructor Shawna Lewis, and we answer questions from listeners. So there are questions about connection with the reins, low energy horses, reactive horses, crooked horses, and taking lessons. So here we go, episode 221, questions and answers. Hi, I'm Karen Rohlf, and welcome to Horse Training in Harmony. This podcast is about you making progress with your horse in a way that you both can love. It's about learning how to move and be in harmony. Because yes, you really can develop a horse to be both athletic and happy. When we show up as our best selves for our horses will show up for us. So let's get started. All right, I am here today joined by a Dressage Naturally instructor and my right-hand person, Shawna Lewis. Welcome, Shawna. Thanks for jumping on this with me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, Karen.
Yeah, well, we're in the middle, well, as Shawna knows, but we are in the middle of celebrating healthy biomechanics this month. I mean, we always celebrate healthy biomechanics, but this month especially because this is one of the months where we have registration open for the Sweet Spot of Healthy Biomechanics course. And yeah, we just are so excited to see the new students enrolling. And Sean, I know you were just got off one of the weekly live Q&A calls that we have for the Sweet Spot course. And yeah, maybe you can, because you can share a little bit about how that went and what we're going to do here, why we're here today.
Yeah, it's so amazing to be on these calls every week and hearing from people that are in the course. And we start out sharing wins, and it seems like every week everybody's got huge wins to share. So that's so fun to hear them talk about that. And then the questions that come up, because we get so many questions like that just from people in general emailing us that aren't in the course. So it'd be fun to share with you guys today some of those questions. And but the calls are always just amazing to see who's on there and people from all different, backgrounds and doing different things with their horses. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
great.
it's so cool. And so on the calls, it's I have a bunch of different Dressage Naturally instructors that are running the calls, and which is fun because it's fun to kind of feel like everybody's got the same idea. We're all, in doing the Dressage Naturally concepts and methods, but every different instructor has a little different way of explaining things or different experiences with different disciplines. And yeah, so it's really fun to give such a well-rounded thing, and different students connect to different instructors. But yeah, so Shauna was just sharing with me of like, answering the questions on the calls, and then we get these emails and we read the emails and we're like, if they were only on the call, they could have been on there talking about this stuff. So yeah, so Shauna put together a bunch of these questions from people that are not in the Sweet Spot course, but their questions are very much related to what we teach in the Sweet Spot course. So I thought that would be fun to kind of jump on here and answer some of the questions and yeah, and explain where they fit in the context of what we teach in the course too. So yeah, so Shauna, fire away.
Okay,
What are
awesome.
some of the...
Yeah, so here, first question from Lee. She says, "What are your thoughts about beginning the connection with the reins? Does it matter if I'm riding with a bit or not? Should I establish the connection with a bit before switching to a bitless bridle? Will I need to retrain once I start using the bit again?"
Yeah, so that's a really, really typical question that we get. And I'm always so happy when those questions come to us because that's what we do. Like there's a lot of people who ride bitless or do dressage with a bit, but there's not that many people who are or systems that are experienced in actually doing dressage, thinking about posture and connection with the reins with a bit and without a bit with equal experience on many, many horses. So super question for here. Um, it's a big, it's a big topic. I always like to answer it from sort of the conceptual Like, okay, if I'm starting with a fresh horse, how do I do it? And my horse's first experience with riding is always without a bit. That's just my standard. So I start without a bit, and then I, do their basics. And then when I start thinking about posture and connection with the reins, I do that without a bit also, because the the posture is what we're trying to usually create, and that has very little to do with the bit. Then at a certain point, if everything's going well and I'm not having to use my reins for a lot of control, then I could say, all right, the bit is a tool of refinement. If the horse is accepting of the bit and thinks that riding around with the bit in their mouth is like okay with them, you know, there's no red flags, then I can think about, well, let's see if it's a tool of refinement, and I can transition to having that connection with the reins with the bit. And if the horse still says that that's okay, then we can go on. And then I just notice with the horse. So for some horses, they're clearly much um, more confident, or they're like, oh, that communication is so much clearer to me. Some of those, with a bit or without, and it's really different horse to horse. So some horses are clearly more comfortable without a bit, and some horses are like, oh, that's just more refined. I can be even lighter, and it's even more clear with a bit. So then you have the information, and I do whatever the horse says that they need. Um, as far as, so, but if you're working with a horse that's used to being with a bit and you'd like to try them bitless, then it sometimes takes a little bit more of a transition just to help re-educate the horse. And that's really all it is. It's like, hey, the reins work differently, but they still mean the same thing. Um, but the connection for me with the reins, well, the reins only have three main purposes. So I'm always thinking about that. The purpose of the reins is um, to feel information from the horse's body, to do subtle positioning of the head and neck, subtle, very subtle, um, or just as another point of connection in that circuit of energy. So whether I have a bit or not a bit, I'm always checking, am I using the reins for those three things, or am I using them to maintain speed? Am I using them because that's the only aid that I need to be able to turn my horse? What are all the things I'm using my reins for? And that's the main thing about working with connection with the reins, is to make sure you're not needing your reins for a million things. Because it's hard to be light if you're using your reins for a million things all the time. So I know that was like a lot. I hope people replay what I just said, because there's a lot in what I just said. Shawna, do you have anything to add? I feel like that was like a big brain dump on on riding and
Yeah,
connection
yeah,
with reins.
that was great. Now I was just thinking like, wow, like module 5 in the sweet spot course is like all about connection with the reins. And it's so cool when people get to that module and start thinking about those concepts with riding with reins and connection.
Yeah, and actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because it is module 5. And a lot of times when people are like, oh, I'm going to learn dressage, and most times they go to dressage lesson and they're like, okay, dressage lesson number 1, get your horse on the bit. Right? So, but in the sweet spot course, connection of the reins is in module 5 out of 6. And that is absolutely by design, because what I found is most of the problems that people have with having a nice, harmonious, yummy connection with the reins, the things that are getting in the way of that are things like, speed control and steering control, trust, balance, posture, the posture of the rider, and um, and that's what we do in modules 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So people will come going, I need help with the connection with the reins. They go in the sweet spot course and they're like, hey, how come you're not talking about the reins? And we go, just wait, just just go through the steps. And then they get to module 5 and they're like, oh, wait, we don't have a problem with the reins anymore. It's like a magic trick. So yeah, that's why we do it that way.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. It's so amazing. That comes up so much on the calls, and we're like, just wait, we'll get to that. And then, yeah, by the time we get there, it's like everything's feeling so much better with them and their horse. Like that piece is not as big of issues. So it's really
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's also good to reiterate. I mean, I talk about this on the podcast a lot, but I'm not I'm pro bitless and I'm pro bit. I'm not anti anything except what the horse needs. So, like in my group of horses, I have some that they all go bitless and bridleless, but bitless for sure. And then some of them, they all accept the bit. Like they all accept the bit, but some more than others. Right? So some accept the bit, I can ride them in the bit, but they often will on any particular day go, not today. And I go, okay. And then some just go better bitless. They can go in the bit, it's fine, but they really go better bitless. Some don't care. I can switch between the two of them and it's all about the same. And then I have one that goes much better with a bit, but actually I'm not even using the bit the whole time. I have the bitless bridle on and then he wears, it's like my half double bridle, and then he wears the curb and every now and then there's like a little touch of it, but he really just having it in his mouth like creates a different posture and dynamic with us. So as long as it's comfortable for the horse and it's being used to communicate and not to control, then it's really up to listening to your horse and seeing, because not every horse is different, and not every horse is a clean slate. And we just have to look at the horse that's in front of us and go, how do we have the most harmonious dynamic, and make sure we're using the reins for what they're for, and we're not using them for control or mechanical, leverage or advantage. So that's where it gets interesting and why it's so important to be able to get on the phone and, on a call and talk about it. Like, okay, today, here's what's going on. And the next week, okay, today, here's what's going on, because it's fluid.
yeah, so true. Yeah, that's where I think so many people take those. That's where the calls are so much fun because people on there, and each week they're like have follow-up questions from what they practiced from the week before, that they got suggestions, and to hear how it went and what went well and their wins, and then where they can make even more improvement and progress. So it's
Yeah.
so
I know so many times people, because most of us are like out by ourselves, out riding around doing our thing, and so many of us are hard on ourselves. And then it's so nice to get on those calls and just be like, oh, it's so nice to hear the challenges that everybody's having, because you just feel normal. You're like, oh, everybody has that problem. And it's like, yes, this is life. We have stuff comes up, and the real magic is in how you move through those challenges, right? Because everybody's gonna have challenges. It's not all a Disney movie, but it's like the measure is how do you handle it when things go not according to plan, or when things feel challenging. Like that's when we need the support to that's when it's like it's not just information, it's how do you apply that information to this horse on this day. That's the hard part of horses.
yeah.
All right, cool.
Cool.
Throw
Next
in.
question.
Yeah, let's get another question.
Okay. Next question from Tina. This is also a very common question. I have a low energy horse. When I ask for a trot, she tends to brace and just feels behind the leg. I feel like I have to keep my leg on just to keep her going. What do you suggest I do to help her be more open to trotting without the brace and feel like that she is now in front of my leg?
Yeah, super, super, super common. Common thing. And there's a whole, I should make a support group for people with low energy horses.
Right.
And the thing is, there's lots of different reasons why a horse might be this way. And, I'm going to answer it from a trainer point of view, but, asterisk footnote, always investigate, pain, health, ulcers, feet, just general nutrition, things like that. So there might be physical reasons why, and we just always want to take that into account. With that being said, when I hear like low energy and I hear brace, um, like I think brace is like a defensiveness. They're defending against something. And sometimes we know what it is and sometimes we don't. Sometimes they have a past history where that's how they learn to survive. Sometimes it's just the way horses are. I mean, I have my horse Solana. I've had her since she was a yearling, and she, like when I first started her, she'd just be like, "Ugh, I'm gonna hit the brakes and I'm just gonna lock down." That's just the way her body operates. That's her answer to everything is just squeeze her muscles, and she can do it with a little smile on her face. That's just how she is. And I've had very comical moments where I've put other people who are rather nice riders on her, and it looks like a lesson horse. She's just like, nope, not gonna go. Just not gonna go. And I'm like,
Yes.
okay, trot. And they're like, it's so embarrassing for everybody because I'm like, okay, this is like a highly educated horse and a highly educated rider. And she's just like, no, you're not asking right. So anyway, so there's sometimes it's just the way horses are, and we have to learn like how does that horse want to be asked? And like with Solana, it's sort of mysterious. It's a mindset and suggestion, and then I have to like get out of the way in some way. So it's counterintuitive. I have to relax my seat and my legs more while at some point, following through on my communication. So it can be complicated, but some horses just feel that way. Some horses have actual defenses up that we can then relax, where we can prove to them again and again that anytime there's a pressure, there's something they can do and the pressure will come off. So many times low energy horses have had the experience that riders will keep their leg on to keep them going. So they're like, well, the leg's going to be on all the time, so I have to brace against that, and there's no reason for them to change it. So it's a re-education to the aids, right? So some horses they're really sensitive and that's where they're like bracing, and so we have to be more relaxed. And some horses it's a just lack of education about communication because they just go, ah, riders always squeeze. So so that's just how life is. Um, sometimes it's a cycle of they're imbalanced, and so because of the imbalance they're braced, and because of the brace they don't go like kind of like the shopping cart with the wonky wheel. You have to push it more, and you push a lot and it doesn't go very much, so it's actually an alignment problem. So this is where with the sweet spot protocol, we're playing with relaxation and energy and balance all together. And we're experimenting because I don't know what the answer to this person's horse is going to be, but it'll be interesting to play. So we really teach people to play because I keep being surprised that some horses you work on their relaxation and that's the key. And now they open up, especially emotionally. And then other horses, you have to kind of like clean the carburetor and like figure out how to like motivate and like go and reward more and get excited and find inspiring areas and get that energy flowing more directly. And sometimes it's balance. Um, my horse Ovation started out very low energy and very kind of an insensitive type. And I had to do things like before I ride him, I go out and put food tubs with food in it and hide it around the property. So we're like, come on, Ovation, go. And he's like, why? And I'm like, no, come on, go. And he's like, but why? And then we finally get there and he's like, oh my God, there's food in the bushes. I go, I know. Let's go find some more. And I'd be like, go. And he's like, why? And I, because there's food. Oh yeah, I forgot. Let's go find some food. So I'd, have to do stuff like that for a certain amount of time. And then I'd be able to go in the arena and do a few circles. But now he's 22 and he's like a rock star. That horse would go forever. I never have to ask him to go. You just saw him recently, Sean, and he's just like, let me at it. So it can get it can get better. Solana is still Solana, but again, she's not necessarily responsive to my request for energy, but she's energetic. And as long as I don't push, she'll go. But man, she does not tolerate squeezing. It just doesn't work. But she's, schooling pre-St. Jordan and she now has a Piaffe and a Passage. So I can't really complain, even though she never quite she feels like a low energy horse. But we've worked it out. We've worked it out because I found my little special sauce with her and it's a lot about relaxation. It's interesting. Um, yeah, anything to add with that, Shauna?
No, I think that yeah, it's always interesting with those horses, right? They they,
Yeah.
they can
It's
be
it's so satisfying when you unlock the code. And I know you've helped a lot of people with horses like this, and it's like sometimes you find that little secret doorway in, and then it's like, oh, there. But
and
there's
I think
never
that,
one
like you
to,
said, is it's so cool to have that the sweet spot protocol, and and in the course, like learning what that is and which piece it is for these type horses of what we need to do to unlock that. So I always find that really interesting. What we think it is sometimes is not necessarily always the piece, but having the protocol, it makes it so easy to figure that out from
yeah.
all that. Yeah, in the sweet spot.
Yeah, there's so much that's counterintuitive, and I've taken in my past and witnessed so many lessons where it's like keep your leg on, keep them going. Okay, more leg, keep them going. Don't let them fall asleep, and you just teach the horse, that they can't, that it's always going to be pushing. And the counterintuitive part is, horses that don't want to move, you have to prove to them that you're not going to make them move. They have to think that the sooner they move, the sooner they get to rest. And it's really counterintuitive and takes a lot of patience. Um, there's a whole psychological way we work with these low energy horses, and we have a few protocols of how to do it in the sweet spot course, but it takes a lot of self-control and support. This is where the support comes in again. It's like, you
Yeah,
got this. We can get through this because it's hard to sit on a horse as a student, and it's like you feel like you're just stopped in your tracks. Like, okay, let's go do stuff, and the horse is like, no, not going anywhere. Um,
yeah.
so
I think that's. I was just thinking that because it's always. I mean, this question comes in so much in that module. Is it module three, two, and three
yeah.
that really help with that? And um, people are kind of amazed how much it can change once they actually know those pieces, that they really their horse starts to open up and they start to be more willing to supply that energy. So that's really cool to see that, because they've gotten stuck so many times, and that's a lot of times they come to us because they're like if they're schooling dressage, they can't get past first level, and they're stuck there because they've got all their aids on. So with these type horses especially.
Yeah, yeah. I'm at first level. I have all my A's on all the time, and it's still not working. Like, oh. Yeah, yeah. We want to start really thinking about the the quality of the communication. And that's in the sweet spot course, we really hold a microscope up to the communication about relaxation, about energy, about balance, and have some exercises that really get detailed and use the psychology to start to have the horses go, oh, I'm actually participating. It's not being done to me, but it's a conversation. And I think just the horses experiencing that of like there's a little, like, I ask something, then the horse does something, and then I let the horse know how they did, and then the horse knows, and then there's a consequence, there's a reward or a rest, or it just feels good. And it seems so obvious and basic, but it's that shift from just methods of control to establishing that communication and taking the time it takes to let that work and sink in, and for the horses to realize that it's happening. Don't you find, Sean, like horses, you've worked with a lot of horses that are, have been just using control methods, and I find it takes a minute for them to go, oh, she's listening.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking that too. And as you were talking, I was also thinking about it's the other pieces, like so many times with people with these type horses get so frustrated. There's another question I have for you about that. But like, they start to get frustrated. So it's also helping support them on the calls that come up a lot, the questions on the calls that like come up a lot of times. So to help them to not be frustrated and keep that lighthearted attitude with these horses. I think that's the other piece of the mind shift for the person, to look at it in a different way.
Absolutely, yeah, because it's not just about dominance.
Yeah.
And anybody who's had a horse that just refuses to go realizes that you can be as dominant as you want, but if the horse says no,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're done. I mean, there's no, If they don't want to do something, they won't.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
you have to be careful going down I'm going to be dominant over you. It's like, you don't want to go to the extreme of that because horses will always win.
yeah, yeah. It's funny because we see so many times I've talked to people on these calls and it's come up and they're almost in tears sometimes.
Yeah.
And then it's not even long into the course that we've had so many calls. And then they're laughing about it and they're having fun and they figured other ways to motivate these horses or the piece that they need that's starting to help that horse open up or going, oh, like you said earlier, the horse starts going, oh, you're not gonna make me do this. Like
Yeah.
you're here to help me. So that's always a fun piece. I find that very fun to see for people.
Yeah, it is cool because, people who listen to this podcast know, I talk about the positive mindset and, attitude of curiosity. And it's like, yeah, 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 that's all nice, Karen. What do you do when when stuff goes wrong? But that's where, it's the exercises which are pretty cool, but it's that daily applications. What do you do when it's not working? What do you do when it's not working? How do you navigate that? And to be able to be there for people in the middle of those moments where it's like, I just had the worst ride in the world. And like, okay, we can relate to be able to express that to a group who gets it and understands what you're trying to do and why you don't want to just, beat your horse to get it done. But
Mhm.
then, okay, now how do we do it? And to just navigate that and keeping our own sense of humor during it and still being, not quitting, not giving up. But how do we navigate it? How do we work around it and just kind of go, okay, that happened. Now what are we going to do about it? And there's no judgment. So I love helping people with that part because that's the part that you can take with you for the rest of your life and apply it in other situations. But because especially when you do the course, you get the 6 months of live calls, and and that's 6 months of time if you show up every week, or even if you just listen to the recordings every week of just immersing in that kind of a group where that's how things are handled. That's how we talk about our horses. That's how we talk with our horses. This is how we problem solve. Because on the live calls too, like you'll tell about the problem you have with your horse, and then you'll hear the instructor think out loud and ask the questions like, okay, well, what else do I need to know to answer that question? What have you done this? And like, well, because of this, I'm thinking that. And because of that, I'm thinking this. And then, notice how that fits into what we taught in module 3, and here's what I think we should do. And then you try it, and then you come back next week and report on how it went. That's pure gold. That's trainer thinking. That's learning to think like a trainer, and in the best sense of the word trainer, in the modern sense of the word trainer. It's like it's problem solving. Here's where I want to go. Here's where I am. How can we get there and stay within our principles and priorities? So, yeah. All right. What's the next question?
Okay. This is from Jennifer. She says, my horse seems to be or is so reactive to things around him. And then he is also gets very reactive and impulsive to me asking him to do things or asking things of him. How do I help him relax?
Yeah. Big subject. Yeah, because relaxation can be mental, emotional, or physical. So that's where I'm thinking, okay, he's tense. So my brain goes mental, emotional, physical, and they could be all related, but there's often an underlying cause. So like mentally not relaxed could be confusion. Like they don't know what they're supposed to do. Those aids are conflicting, or he's just they don't know. So confusion is a lack of relaxation. Emotionally, it can be some degree of they're scared of something, right? There's something they're like, I'm not okay with that. So fear related. And then physically not relaxed is, they're holding extra tension somewhere. That can be for a reason. Like if a horse is crooked, you have to be more tense somewhere in your body or you're going to fall over because your balance isn't keeping you upright. Or it could be residual, like that used to hurt last year, and I'm still bracing because it might hurt again, and you haven't, the body doesn't know how to let go of that. And it can be just a habit. It can, there can be physical tension in there for reasons that are currently there, pain or imbalance, or it could be physical tension that's in there because something used to be in pain or out of balance. And then you can help melt that away. So I'll usually address whatever one is showing up. They're all related. So often if one's showing up, they're showing up in other areas too, especially if it's been chronic. Um, so you just start with something. You start with all, let's peel the onion and start a little bit. Let's do a little bit of, you know, checking the balance or doing some moving massage or something to help like release tension. At the same time, let's make sure that I'm being super clear. Let's make sure that the horse understands exactly what to do. And then let's try to notice the first moment if the horse shows any kind of fear or anxiety. I mean, that could happen, that can start in the grooming stall. It can start in places you don't often notice. So I'm just sort of zooming out first and going, okay, here's the stuff that's going on. Where's the first moment it happens? And where are all the areas I see it? And then start melting it away. Um, horses that get in the state, some of them in that state can actually freeze and get blocky. Some horses get explosive, some horses just get fast, some horses get spooky. So all of those things are signs that there's some tension there. Um, so again, you want to just kind of peel the layers away, and then we have some exercises for horses who are um, like just impulsive and like going really fast. We have some really specific exercises to help them think and help them regulate themselves. And um, you can't control an emotion. You have to set up an exercise and then wait for it to change. And I think that's really important point too, is, with if it's mental confusion, you have to go to school and educate, like, hey, this means this. But if it's emotional, you have to kind of set something up so that they can figure it out and that they have the time to, it helps them make better decisions and realize that they're safe. And then physical, we can play with posture, balance, and body work. And then something that you're specialized in, Shawna, which is like the tapping and moving massage, which we teach in the course. And yeah, you can probably go on for this is your
Yeah.
subject of relaxation. So yeah, what else can you add to that?
Yeah, I love everything you said. And I think that's what, you know, making sure that we can find those areas of tension and just help our horses feel better around us and figure out, like you said, where it's coming from. Is it, what's the piece and how to help them. But yeah, moving massage is amazing. And I think that's where it's so fun to talk about that on the calls each week too, because it's not an easy thing
Mm-mm.
actually to teach sometimes because it's so much of just being in the moment, being there in the moment, and you're not asking anything of your horse, but everybody wants to feel like they're trying to get their horse to do something. So I think that's what's fun to help people on those calls like understand that and go deeper with that, having our horses feel just good in their bodies. And we can be our horse. We can be doing that for them and not have to be necessarily paying a body worker every week to come. You can actually be that. And then the body worker comes and they're like, oh my gosh, what have you been doing? I've had that happen so many times with students. Their body workers show up and they're like, oh, he feels great. Like I don't even have too much to do. So I think that's a cool piece. That's just you go deep in this course and in the sweet spot course and being able to have that support each week. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I know, and we do get that a lot with from moving massage and from everything we teach, like my horse didn't need an adjustment or the body work is sticking. And I know with the people who work on my horses, the comment that I'll often get is how much one thing like the chiropractors, the osteopaths, they'll set something up and they're like, your horse is helping me with this. Like as a joke once, one said, she started to set up and she just said out loud, she's like, no, you're gonna have to put your head here and then just relax. And the horse just did it. And she looked at me and she's like, did that just happen? I'm like, yeah, it did. I mean, they understand that whenever there's a feel or a pressure, there's some it means something, and like they understand cooperation. Plus, the whole protocol helps horses feel their bodies, and we're listening to them and how they feel. So we're working with them so they know that, like, ooh, when mom touches me, I end up feeling better. So they, if you do this for long enough and consistently, they start to get that. Like, oh, I get it. That she's communicating and she wants me to feel better. So that's fun. But yeah, you're
Yeah.
right about the moving massage because it's a simple technique and it's like I have a million videos on it, maybe not a million, but I have a bunch of videos on it. And it's like, what's she doing? Like I'm just walking along. I have my hand on my horse, and the horse is walking or trotting, and then everything's like letting loose. And the instructions are simple, like just feel stuff and then relax. So it's an exercise that it totally works, but it's easy to think you're doing it, but you need to like get that support of like do it more or do it differently or actually relax more. You're doing too much. And people be like, "Oh, I thought I was doing it." But then with some support, they're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
now I get it." Like they don't understand like how like a lot of times on the calls it's like you're doing it just more like there's another layer. There's another layer you can get to that I think if you haven't done this with a whole bunch of horses, it's easy to stop too short of the good stuff, the really good stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say too, because I feel like that's another big thing about these calls that with the support and being able to send in questions like this and like you're reminded each week because a lot of times it's very similar questions that come in each week, but you get it's either asked in a different way, so it might, or a different coach is talking about it, but you also get the reminder like, hey, like these are things that we need to consistently be practicing. And sometimes we forget to add certain things into our routines with our horses or to be thinking or feeling for certain things. And I think that's another huge thing, just that reminder and the accountability and is why people make so much progress in the support that comes that we just are excited to give to everybody here.
Yeah, yeah. It's so fun.
Yeah.
All right. Any more questions?
Yes, I have one more from Mary. She says, when I'm traveling right on a 20-meter circle, I feel that my horse is constantly falling in on the inside shoulder. I'm always asking him to move that shoulder over, or I'm having to hold on my inside leg. I get stuck having my aids on, and it doesn't seem to be working or helping. And I'm frustrated. What should I do?
Yeah. Another typical question, super common. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening. They're going, "Hey, that's me." Right? And you look down and why is one rein always tight and the other rein's always loose? Or why is one hand always crossing over? Or why is one leg always squinched up? Why are you always leaning over to one side? Yeah, so super common. It's a normal problem. This is a normal horse problem because horses are not born symmetrical, neither are humans. And they're built for straight lines, and now we're doing circles. So normal problem, but the compounded problem is if you do what this person's describing, it's so many times you'll hear an instructor going, keep that inside leg on so they don't fall in, or hold the shoulder over there, like don't let them fall in. And so think about like with crookedness, we're just crooked. They're not always, unless they're trying to get into the middle of the ring, they're not doing it on purpose mentally. They're just like, I don't know why I'm falling in. It's like a car with one tire that's a little flat. It just goes in. They, they don't know why. So, um, so we want to make sure we're not treating it just as a behavior problem. And so think about if you're crooked, or maybe someone has experienced this, like you lay down on a massage table, or I lay down on a massage table, and I'm very crooked. My spine and pelvis are a mess. Um, so, and it takes a lot of work to keep myself fairly aligned. But anyway, so I lay down on a table and I'm all comfy, and then the person comes along and they like, pull on your legs and straighten you, and then I feel really crooked. Does that happen to you, Shauna? Like you get straightened out. Like, well, now I feel now I feel crooked. It feels weird. And if I don't use my brain, every part of my body wants to go back crooked again because that's where I feel normal. So the horses, for whatever reason, they're falling on one shoulder and then that feels good to them or they wouldn't do it. So they're like, this feels good. I'm going to just drift this way. And then the rider goes, no, you have to stay here. And the horse is going, that feels worse. I want to be falling in on the shoulder because that feels normal to me. So you're giving the horse the choice of feel good and fall in or feel not good and where I'm putting you. And that's why you have to keep so many aids on because the horse is going to try harder to get back to where they feel good. So so now we're stuck. So the way we do it in the sweet spot course is we go, okay, here's where you feel good. Where are some other possibilities of where you could be? So I'm not going to say you must put your shoulder over here. I'm just going, well, how does this feel, horse, if you just move your rear end over to the right for a stride or two? Thank you. How about your rear end over to the left for a stride or two? Thank you. How about your shoulders more into the right? How does that feel? How about your shoulders out to the other side for a few strides? How does that feel? And then PS, hey, how about if I sit a little like this? Or how about I sit a little like that? If I twist to the inside, how does that feel? If I twist to the outside, how does that feel? So we're saying there's a bunch of different ways that we could be lined up here. How does it feel? And we try something and we listen to the horse. And then we notice, is there a moment where, oh my God, he went 3 strides before he tried to fall in again? What did I do right before that? And so it's this experimentation, and we're trying to find alignment and the hype, and that way the horse can has a few things to compare. They can go, okay, here's me feeling normal falling into the right, and here's me doing this really awkward position for a couple strides. It's the opposite of that. And then we leave them alone and go, well, what do you want to do? And in the process of them going from where they're comfortable to doing the weird thing that we ask, and then on the way between the weird thing that we ask and allowing them to do whatever they want. So if they fall back in, when they go between those two things, they're passing through a moment which is actually aligned. And the idea is that alignment ought to feel eventually better compared to the two things because maybe it doesn't feel normal, but they'll be able to move more freely. They'll feel that they're not stressing one of their legs more than the other, but they have to pass through that a bunch of times before they start to believe it because now they have more options, not just what we want to do versus what they want to do, but opposite of that. So the that was a long answer to something you can maybe picture. Like we use pool noodles a lot around here in Dressage Naturally. And so picture you have a pool noodle in front of you and you just was traveling in your suitcase. And so it's curled to the right and you want it straight. If you have that in front of you, have a crooked pool noodle and I said, here, straighten this out. 100% of you, at least I can say that because this is what I do in demos with people, is you will end up bending it the opposite way to the left and then you'll let go. And if it still isn't straight, you'll do that again and let go, right? So that's the way you straighten things. You go the other direction and then you let go of them. You don't just sit there holding the pool noodle straight with a death grip on. But that's what we do with horses too many times. Don't let them fall in, keep that leg on. And it's like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work with a pool noodle. It doesn't work with a horse. So again, this idea, the concept is somewhere there's this certain combination of relaxation, energy, and balance where your horse is going to, ooh, that feels better. And we experiment, we play, we give them possibilities, we let the horse feel stuff, and we don't hold them there. We let the horse feel stuff. And by doing that, we'll get 80% improvement for sure. And then I know there's some, dressage specialists out there. They're probably like, no, you must be precise. And like, yes, you can be precise once if you've got your horse cooperating and finding this with ease and in communication and in lightness, and the horse has already agreed to get 80% of the way there, and you're using no aids to sustain that, how easy would it be at that point to make a few precise revisions and refinements when your horse already is you've proven to your horse that when you add aids, they end up feeling better. So if we then they'll be like, oh, okay, you want my neck a little bit more to the left? Okay. Like they're much more open and then we're in a place where then, then you strengthen, you do gymnastics. But I don't like to do gymnastics until the easy stuff is easier and being done with ease. That was a lot of words. How'd I do, Shawna?
So great. Great explanation. Yeah, I was thinking, I don't have a question around this, but I was thinking we've talked about it. And a lot of times, a lot of students that come to us don't have an instructor locally, but a lot do. And they also have lots of questions around how to do the programs that we have and take lessons at home from their local instructor. And I was thinking maybe you could just talk about that and some of the common things that come up around that.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, like even in that last example, it's like my instructor's telling me to keep my inside leg on, and I'm saying, take it off and see what happens. So navigating how to do this stuff with a local instructor is part of what we can help people with. So, if someone's feeling like there's conflict, then well, they're always welcome to ask us questions. Like, you said this, but my instructor says this. And then I'll ask more questions and we'll try to figure out, like, oh, okay, this is what your instructor wants. And, sometimes the protocols that we use, because they're not about control, sometimes it takes a little longer. Like, we're not going to make it look like your horse doesn't want to fall in. If it wants to fall in, it's going to fall in. And then we're going to do something so that 2 weeks from now, it doesn't fall in, But if you're in a lesson today, it might not, it might be conflicting. So sometimes we help people go, maybe don't take a lesson for a couple weeks, get this going better, and then go back and have a lesson. And that instructor is going to feel like they are the best instructor ever because their last lesson 2 weeks ago made a miraculous change in your horse. And you don't have to, it'll just be our secret. But I think what we do is give people the confidence to go, okay, here's the problem. Here's how we'll address it. And we'll get, do you agree with that? Would you like your horse to be more aligned without having to keep your leg on? Does it make sense that we can show him some possibilities and the balance should feel good to your horse? So of course he'll want to join you there eventually. If that makes sense, then step aside for a minute because you might have an instructor that's a dressage instructor who's measuring it differently. They're like, no, you must stay on the line of travel. You must do this. And then, but because your horse isn't ready for that, you're going to need to force them there with your leg. So you can sort of see where it fits in. And then when your horse is more aligned, then you can go and have a lesson with that instructor and it'll be amazing because you'll actually be able to get to the expertise of that instructor because you've addressed the things you need to address. So sometimes it's just that. It's like your instructor's fine. You just need to handle some issues before you go back to the instructor. Some instructors get really curious and like, hey, wait a minute, how did you do that? Your horse is going really well this week. And the instructors end up taking the course. And for some people, um, if they might start realizing like, oh, I don't think it's a good fit anymore. And we definitely don't tell people to do that unless we feel like it's really conflicting. They know it's conflicting and they just need some courage and support around doing it. But we definitely will help people get the most out of the lessons that they're having, and every situation is different. We're big on asking questions, so we always recommend if there's feels like there's a conflict, ask us, and then we'll help them find the question to ask their instructor. And they should always, I don't know, in my world, if I'm taking a lesson, I should be able to ask a question. And if I am not allowed to ask a question, it's a red flag. So we do help people advocate for themselves and advocate for their horses. And I think that's where, like the principles and priorities that we operate within, really help people to stand strong in their convictions, but also also understand when like, oh yeah, your instructor, that is a that's a great exercise your instructor's doing, and here's how it fits, and here's what they mean, or ask them this question. So we really can help with any part of that relationship. And it sometimes is a big issue. How'd I do?
Um, I think that's all the questions I have. Great.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's
Always good.
Yeah, I think that's a good bunch of questions for now. And yeah, it's so this is where the real stuff happens, is when people are, you know, taking these exercises and then really applying them in real life. And we need support. They go through some transformations. Sometimes day one of the exercise is different than 2 weeks later doing the exercise, because you're in a different place, and the ups and downs of the emotional roller coaster that is being with horses. It's just so fun to help people all the way through that, and yeah, and get that community going, and finding students meeting up with each other, or like, hey, you're in my area, and have new
Yeah,
study
that's the other
buddies.
fun thing. Yeah, just there's so many people from just everywhere on this calls. So people have, I think, enjoyed meeting different people. And like you said, the connection of hearing, yeah, other people have the same things sometimes with their horses, and the ups and downs. I know like there has even today one student was like, "Yay, like I just have to celebrate a win because I went home and practiced this past week." And she kind of had made progress and then was feeling a little defeated and down. But then this week she was like, "Yeah, I applied some of the things from last week's call and was like celebrating huge wins and had a breakthrough with her horse." And so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, that's fun, because I know like some people are in um barns or something, or stables, where there's people around them that like really are like-minded, and but a lot of people aren't. So they're like, yeah, I try to like say how great my horse was doing something, and nobody like understands what I'm trying to do. So it's so nice to have that community where, everybody gets it.
yeah,
And you have the language like, oh, I got the sweet spot, I got the basic alignment exercise, I did the moving massage, and everybody knows what you're trying to do with that. And yeah. So anyway, well, thanks for coming with those questions, Shauna. It's yeah, it's fun. I hope these answers help someone with these similar problems. And yeah, and if anybody has any questions about the Sweet Spot course, just email us. Info@dressagenaturally.net is the best way. You can even set up a private consult with Shauna. Like, anybody who's not sure, and this is true year round. If you think you want to do something with Dressage Naturally and you're not sure which resource, because we have a lot, you can just it's free. And you just book a private consult with Shauna, and she'll sit and talk to you and figure out what the best action to take would be. So thanks for doing those, Shauna.
yeah, you're welcome. Look forward to hearing from all those people out there. What those
Clear
calls.
clear your calendar. Yeah.
Fill
But
my
yeah,
calendar.
yeah, and as you might imagine, because we're enrolling in the Sweet Spot course now, Shauna's schedule, might fill up. So if you're like, maybe I should just do it, just shoot her an email, info@dressagenaturally.net. She'll shoot you the link, and yeah, we'll just answer your question. We'll let you know if it's not a good time for the course, where, we want it to be the right thing at the right time. So anyway, thanks, Shauna.
Thank you.